It was past midnight when I heard the front door creak open. Not the soft click of Marla coming home after yoga or a late shift, but a slow, cautious push. The kind you make when you're trying not to wake anyone or trying not to be caught. I didn't say anything. I just turned the volume down on the TV, letting the blue light flicker against the far wall. I'd fallen asleep on the couch hours earlier, but something instinct maybe woke me before she came in. Or maybe I'd never really been asleep at all. She stepped inside, coat tight around her shoulders, heels clicking with unnatural care on the hardwood floor. I didn't have to ask what time it was, I already knew. I didn't have to ask where she'd been, I knew that too. "Client dinner," she said, as if reading from a script. Her voice was chipper, too chipper. She pulled the jacket tighter around her shoulders like it belonged to her, but it didn't. It was a man's coat. Long, dark, heavy. Wool, maybe cashmere. Way too big to be hers. "Oh," I said, not moving from the couch. Just enough to let her know I was paying attention. My voice sounded foreign in the quiet room, like it didn't belong to me. She blinked, surprised to see me still up. "Yeah." It ran a little late. "You know how these things go." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because right then I caught it, that scent. It wasn't hers. Not the lavender mint perfume I bought her for Christmas 2 years ago, not the citrusy stuff she wore to the office. No. This was something darker. Muskier. A man's cologne. Subtle but clinging to the fibers of that jacket like smoke after a fire. She moved past me, brushing my shoulder with hers, and I swear to God, I flinched. My eyes followed her as she walked to the hallway, fingers brushing back her hair in that same absent-minded way she always did when she was lying. I'd seen that tell a dozen times. At dinner parties. On awkward phone calls with her mom. But this time it hit differently. She kept talking casually like she was trying to make it all sound normal. The client ordered a second bottle of wine. "You know how Rick is, he loves to show off." I didn't have much, just a glass. Maybe 2. Rick. Right? The imaginary client I was supposed to believe existed. I nodded again, though she wasn't looking at me anymore. She kicked off her heels by the front door, then hesitated, eyes scanning the floor like she couldn't remember where she'd left her bag. She found it slung over the side of the armchair, another detail that didn't make sense. She always carried her bag into the bedroom. "Always? Are you hungry?" she asked. "I think there's still some soup in the fridge." She hadn't eaten dinner. I could tell. And that wasn't normal either. Marla never skipped meals, especially not after a long day. Her energy was off, a restless, like a caged bird looking for an open window. I stood up slowly, bones cracking under the weight of whatever this moment was turning into. "Nah," I said. "I'm good." She gave me a quick smile, then ducked into the bedroom, the door clicking shut a little too fast behind her. And just like that, I was alone in the silence again. I stared at the jacket hanging by the door. It looked expensive. Well cut. A little too stylish for someone named Rick who drinks wine and talks about quarterly targets. I walked over to it slowly, like it might bite. The scent hit me again. Not strong, but undeniably masculine. Leather and wood. Something private. Something an asterisk, mate. I didn't touch it. I just stood there, hands at my sides, trying to hold back the wave of heat rising in my chest. Not rage. Not yet. Just realization. That was the moment it all broke open in my head. The missed calls. The last-minute overnight training in Denver. The deleted messages. The way she laughed harder at her phone than she did at my jokes these days. It wasn't just suspicion anymore. It was gravity. A shift. A quiet drop in the air, like the first second after an earthquake when the world hasn't fully processed the damage, but you already know nothing's where it was a moment ago. She didn't even ask me how my day was. Not that I needed her to. But that was something we used to do without thinking. "How was your day?" It was muscle memory. Marriage is built on those small rituals, and when they vanish, it's louder than any argument. Louder than a slammed door or a screaming match. And right then, I realized how many things had quietly disappeared. She used to text me goodnight when she worked late. She used to kiss me on the forehead when she left in the morning, even when I pretended to still be asleep. She used to laugh in bed, whisper jokes while brushing her teeth. Lately, all of that had been replaced with silence. And now a man's coat. She came out of the bedroom 15 minutes later in her pajamas, long sleeves, flannel pants, not the silk ones she wore when she wanted to be noticed. Her face was washed clean, her hair tied up, her voice softer. "You're still up," she said, pretending to be surprised. I looked at her like I was seeing her for the first time. Not the woman I married, but a stranger in her skin. Someone who knew me well enough to lie convincingly. "Yeah," I said. "Had trouble sleeping." She gave me a nod, one that said she understood but didn't press further. She didn't offer to sit with me, didn't reach for my hand, didn't ask what was wrong. Instead, she mumbled something about brushing her teeth and walked back toward the bathroom, her slippers whispering against the tile. When I finally made my way into the bedroom, the lights were already off. She was curled up on her side of the bed, back to me. I lay down slowly, careful not to disturb the quiet. But it wasn't peaceful. It was the kind of silence that hums just beneath your skin, buzzing with everything unsaid. I stared at the ceiling, counting each breath like it mattered. Her breathing was even, controlled, like someone pretending to be asleep. I didn't reach out. I didn't say goodnight, because the truth was already between us, bigger than either of us could ignore. I didn't need her to say the words. I didn't need some dramatic confession or tearful apology. In that moment, I knew. Whatever had happened tonight, it hadn't ended with a contract signed over steak and red wine. It had ended somewhere else. Someone else. Maybe it was just one night. Maybe it was more. But something had crossed a line. And once that line is crossed, you can't uncross it. You can forgive maybe, but forgetting is a different thing altogether. I lay there in the dark, staring into nothing, trying to remember the last time I felt like she was mine. Really mine. Not just physically next to me, but emotionally present. Invested. Safe. I couldn't. That realization hit harder than anything else. Not the coat. Not the cologne. Not even the lie. It was the absence. The absence of connection. Of comfort. Of her. She was there in the bed, sure. But she was already gone. The next morning, the world didn't feel different, but I did. Marla was already in the kitchen when I woke up, moving around like nothing had happened. She was dressed in her yoga set, hair pulled into a tight bun, pouring almond milk into her cereal like we weren't pretending. She gave me a smile when I walked in, soft, practiced. "Morning," she said, voice light. I mumbled something in return and reached for the coffee pot. My mind wasn't on caffeine. It was spinning, pulling together puzzle pieces that had been scattered across the last few months. Except now, they weren't scattered. They were clicking into place with uncomfortable precision. I stirred my coffee absently, watching her out of the corner of my eye. She scrolled through her phone, then flipped it over the moment she noticed me looking. That was new. Well, newish. She used to leave her phone face up on the counter, screen lighting up every few minutes with meaningless notifications. Now it was always flipped screen down. Always on silent. Always with some new privacy setting enabled after the last iOS update she didn't understand. I sipped my coffee and stared at the tile. 2 months ago, she said she needed more time away from the house to focus on her personal growth. She had started going on day-long wellness retreats with some women from work. It sounded believable at first. They'd take yoga mats and post filtered group selfies with inspirational quotes like, "Honor your boundaries." What wasn't posted, though, was where they actually went. Or who they went with. It hadn't bothered me at the time. I thought maybe she was just finding herself. Maybe I'd been too passive in the relationship, not giving her the space she needed to breathe. I was ready to blame myself. But now, after last night, I wasn't so sure. "You heading into the office today?" she asked, breaking the silence. "Yeah," I said, I still on my mug. "Busy day." She nodded. "I've got a client pitch around noon, then maybe drinks after work with Lindsay." Another vague itinerary. Another name pulled from the bag of workplace acquaintances. I didn't even know if Lindsay was real. "Sounds good," I said. I didn't push. Not yet. But I was already cataloging everything. Every lie she thought I hadn't noticed. Like the call log I stumbled on by accident, her phone had synced with our shared iPad last month. She deleted all her call history, but iCloud had kept a shadow of it. There were 5 calls to a number I didn't recognize. Each over 20 minutes. Always in the evening. Always when I was at the gym or on a Zoom meeting in the other room. She said they were for a client onboarding. Said the client was based in Europe. Time zone difference. Very demanding. Except I ran that number through a reverse lookup site. It belonged to someone named Colin. No last name. Just Colin. She never mentioned a Colin at work. That was the beginning. Then there were the trips, little ones, nothing major. An overnight here, a weekend there. Business Strategy Summit. Women in Tech Retreat. Leadership Intensive. She'd always pack the same travel bag. Always fly out of the smaller airport one town over. Always send a photo from the hotel. But I'd started checking the location metadata. The backgrounds didn't match the cities she claimed to be in. One picture had her sipping wine on a balcony. She said it was Denver. The GPS tag said Santa Fe. Another showed her at a jazz lounge. Said it was part of a networking event. But I zoomed in on the background and spotted a neon sign. Distinct, Crooked. I searched it. Found the same bar in a completely different state. Little things. Quiet lies. And now I couldn't stop seeing them. I remembered how her clothes had started changing. Not all at once, but gradually. The yoga pants gave way to sleek black dresses. New lingerie tags appeared in the trash. A brand she'd never worn. Not my style either. Someone else's idea of what looked good on her, maybe. She stopped sharing playlists with me. We used to trade songs. Now her earbuds were always in, face blank, scrolling quietly on her phone. She said it helped her focus. She used to hum when she cooked. She didn't anymore. The absences piled up. Phone off during emergency meetings. Hours unaccounted for. Sudden guilt trips that I didn't trust her instincts. That was her favorite deflection. Why don't you believe in me? I had believed in her. That was the problem. But now I was wide awake. And I had receipts. That weekend, I opened up our old desktop computer. The one we hadn't used since upgrading to laptops. She'd forgotten it was still connected to the cloud. Still syncing with her old iPhone backups. She thought deleting messages from her phone meant they were gone. They weren't. The backups had timestamp chats. Whole conversations restored in chronological order. Names, dates, photos. I didn't even have to dig for them. They practically begged to be found. One thread from early spring caught my eye. Colin booked the room. Same hotel as last time. Don't forget your gray sweater. I like that one. Marla, you're such a dork. I'm packing it. Don't worry. Can't wait to see you. Another just a few weeks ago. Marla. He asked where I was tonight. I hate lying to him. I feel disgusting. Colin. Then stop feeling guilty. You're with me because you want to be. You're not the bad guy. She hadn't replied to that one. Not immediately. But the next message she sent? Marla. I'll be there by 9. Don't start the movie without me. I leaned back in the desk chair, the screen glowing against my face. My hands weren't shaking. I felt cold, steady, numb maybe, the kind of numb that settles in when the grief has passed and there's only clarity. She wasn't confused. She wasn't emotionally lost. She was cheating. I stared at the wall for a long time. There wasn't a blow-up. No slammed fists. No screaming. That wasn't who I was. And frankly, I didn't want to give her the satisfaction of drama. I didn't want to give her anything, really. I just opened a folder on the desktop and titled it Documentation. Inside, I saved **TS, chat logs, location tags, transaction reports. I went through our joint bank account and cross-checked every suspicious charge. Dinner in Boulder when she said she was in Phoenix. Spa retreat under an unfamiliar name. Gas station stops too far from any logical route to her wellness retreat. It was all there. Every inconsistency. Every careless breadcrumb. I created a spreadsheet. Organized by date. Cross-referenced with calendar entries and text timestamps. Color-coded. If I was going to do something about this, I was going to do it right. No emotion. Just facts. At lunch that day, Marla texted me a photo of her salad. Captioned, "Trying to be healthy. LOL. Smiling emoji. No context. I stared at the image. Then I opened the spreadsheet and entered the timestamp. 3:16 p.m. Thursday. Lunch with Lindsay. I opened our Ring camera archive and checked the timeline. No one named Lindsay had come to the house. She hadn't carpooled. More importantly, I tracked the location of the Uber she ordered earlier. The receipt was still in her email. The drop-off location wasn't a salad place. It was a boutique hotel downtown. I didn't feel the floor drop out from under me. I didn't feel anything. I just kept typing. Because the truth wasn't coming from her. It was coming from the data. And it didn't lie that there's something strange about betrayal. It doesn't always arrive with fanfare. Sometimes it's quiet, methodical, more spreadsheet than soap opera, more timestamp than tears. The deeper I went, the clearer things became. After syncing the old cloud backups to an external drive, I started going through Marla's messages one thread at a time. Her old iMessages, hidden drafts, deleted photos, they painted a picture she thought she'd buried. But the thing about the cloud is, it remembers. There were over 3,000 text exchanges between her and someone listed as C. I already knew who it was, Colin. The same Colin she claimed was just part of her creative team at work. The same guy whose number kept popping up at night. I spent the entire weekend reading through their history. At first, it was innocuous. Project deadlines, shared frustrations, occasional late-night sarcasm. But slowly, over the span of a few months, the tone shifted. The messages lengthened, grew warmer. Then came emojis. Then came photos. One from January stood out, a blurry selfie of the two of them sitting side by side in a jazz lounge. Marla was leaning into him, glass of red wine in hand. His arm was around her shoulders. They both looked a little drunk, a little too comfortable. I checked the date. January 27th. That was the same night she told me she had a client strategy session downtown and would be home late. She had texted me at 10:42 p.m., heading home soon. Brutal night. Can't wait to crash. At 10:41 p.m., Colin had texted her, let's stay for one more set. You still owe me a dance. I didn't reply to her lie then. But I did add it to the folder. I wasn't just collecting evidence. I was curating it. Each entry had its own heading, summary, supporting screensh*, TS, and a note on what she'd told me that day. I gave the folder a name, Failover Plan, because when a system fails, you don't scream. You switch. The jazz lounge photo was just the beginning. There were calendar invites to fake meetings, notes in her iPhone that sounded like messages she hadn't dared send, and a recurring hotel reservation under a different email account. She'd created a second Gmail address I hadn't known existed, one that routed to a separate calendar and travel app logged into on her tablet but never on her phone. That's where I found their itinerary for a weekend in Colorado. A cabin. Fireplace. Wine tasting. Hot springs. She told me she was going to a women's leadership summit in Boulder. She even left behind a printed packet with a cover sheet labeled Empowerment Through Innovation. I remember laughing at the title and wishing her luck. Now I knew the whole thing was manufactured. She had made the packet herself. I cross-checked the charges from our joint credit card and found a payment to a vacation rental service, one I knew we never used before. The listing matched the photos I later found in her hidden, recently deleted folder. Scenic views. Matching robes. A blurry Polaroid of two wine glasses on a balcony table. I could only see the top of someone's hand in that one. But I recognized the watch. I'd seen it on Colin's wrist in one of her Instagram stories from a team brunch. The one she posted without realizing the reflection in the coffee pot gave them away. It was always the little things. The way she looked at her phone now, tilting it ever so slightly. The way she'd slide into the bathroom with it when a message came in late. The sudden obsession with syncing her photos to the cloud in case my phone crashes. She didn't realize I still had access to the shared drive we'd created years ago. It was practically abandoned, but some of her auto-uploads still passed through it by default. That's how I found the audio memo. At first, I thought it was a voice note she sent to herself. But it was longer than most. And her tone wasn't businesslike. It was soft. Whispered. Breathless. I wish we didn't have to sneak around like this, she said, her voice trembling in the recording. I hate going back to him. Every time feels worse. But if I left now, it would explode everything. I'm just not ready. I need more time. There was a pause. Then Colin's voice, you've had time. You're not trapped. You're just afraid of being the bad guy. Another pause. Maybe, she whispered. Maybe I'm both. I sat there, eyes fixed on the waveform, the seconds ticking by like countdowns. That single file gutted me more than all the photos combined. She wasn't confused. She wasn't caught up in something accidental. She was choosing this. Over me. Over us. I didn't cry. That part of me was long gone. Morning had already happened quietly in pieces. During every little moment I swallowed my doubt. Every time I accepted a late night at face value. Every look I gave her that went unanswered. I was already grieving a relationship she had walked out of months ago. Now I was building my exit. I called an attorney the next day. Not just any attorney, this was someone who specialized in post-nuptial enforcement. A quiet man with gray hair and thick glasses who didn't blink when I said I had proof. When I showed him the folder, he leaned back in his chair and nodded once. You have what you need, he said. And you have a solid case to trigger the clause. The clause. It was buried in legalese, almost forgotten. A postnup we signed after a rocky period in our marriage 3 years ago. At the time, it was about security. About fairness. About rebuilding trust. Marla insisted on it after we had a close call, an emotional boundary I nearly crossed with someone else. I backed off. I told her everything. We went to counseling. She wanted protection if it ever happened again. I agreed. But the clause wasn't one-sided. It stated that if either partner engaged in an undisclosed extramarital affair and it could be proven beyond reasonable doubt, the entire contents of our jointly held assets would revert to the non-offending party. Full control. Full division. No contest. She had insisted on it. Ironically, now it was my failsafe. I started prepping the legal packet. Clean. Chronological. Emotionally detached. Everything dated and indexed. I created 3 versions, one for my attorney, one for documentation, and one for Marla. I even titled it Out of Office, a personal audit. Just for me. Then I changed the passwords to every shared account, Dropbox, banking, insurance, utilities. I rerouted email confirmations. I created backups on encrypted drives. Not to punish, just to prepare. The final straw came when I checked the dashcam footage from her car. She thought it was just a basic GPS logger. What she didn't realize was that I'd upgraded it last year with motion audio sync. A quiet project after our last car break-in. The footage from a Thursday night 2 weeks ago showed her parked outside a brownstone. Timestamp, 8:43 p.m. Audio caught the door opening, laughter. Colin's voice again. You always park in the same spot. It's like you want to get caught. Her reply? I think part of me does. Then they kissed. It wasn't a long kiss. Just enough to be final. I paused the frame, fast-forwarded, then closed the file. That was it. I'd seen enough. I didn't need her version. I didn't need to scream. I didn't even need to look her in the eye. Because the data had already spoken. And it had told the truth she never would. There was no epiphany. No final outburst. No emotional collapse. Just quiet. By the time Marla came home that Sunday night, laughing at something on her phone, breathless from the cold, I already knew what I was going to do. I watched her slip out of her coat, that same faux cheerful hum in her throat, as if the weight of her deceit didn't exist. As if the ground hadn't already shifted beneath her feet. I nodded from the kitchen, a polite smile fixed to my face like a prop. She kissed my cheek. I let her. She poured a glass of wine and disappeared into the den. Probably texting him. I cleaned up dinner. Dried the plates. Turned out the lights. Then I went upstairs, closed the bedroom door, and began the first real steps toward freedom. I'd already done most of the prep, the financial sorting, the document compiling, the contingency planning, but this was the moment it became real. Tangible. I wasn't just building a case anymore. I was building a way out. I sat at the desk in our bedroom and pulled out the post-nuptial agreement we'd signed years earlier. I ran my finger across the highlighted clause, the one that turned infidelity into forfeiture. Section 4, subpoint B. In the event of undisclosed extramarital conduct supported by verifiable evidence, all jointly held marital assets will transfer under sole control of the injured party without litigation or arbitration. Marla had insisted on that clause back then. I remembered the conversation clearly, how certain she'd been that she'd never be the one who needed grace. She wanted protection from betrayal. And she got it. She just didn't realize she gave me the same sword. The irony wasn't lost on me. That night, after she went to bed, I stayed up in the office with nothing but a USB drive, my laptop, and a list. I started with the bank accounts. We had a shared checking account, 2 savings accounts, a joint brokerage, and 3 credit cards. All listed under both our names. Over the course of an hour, I initiated transfers into a private account I'd set up under a trust, one I established quietly after I found her first lie. The name on it wasn't mine. It was our high school mascot buried behind a small LLC. I wasn't trying to be dramatic. Just invisible. Then came the logins. Email. Utilities. Subscriptions. Streaming services. Cloud storage. Passwords she thought we shared. I reset each one. New passwords. New security questions. 2-factor authentication rerouted to a burner phone. By 3:15 a.m. she was locked out of every system we had ever touched together. I moved to the documents next. I loaded every piece of evidence into 3 folders, each encrypted, named by date, mirrored in the cloud. I labeled them carefully. Legal, for the attorney. Professional, for her employer. Personal, just for her. I didn't include everything in her copy. Just enough. The final step was the house. 2 years ago, I'd pushed for the security upgrade, the gate code, the smart locks, the camera system. She had argued about the cost. Now, it worked in my favor. I pulled up the dashboard and revoked her access code. Disabled her biometric scan from the front gate. Changed the interior locks to backup mode. I stood in the hallway, barefoot in the dark. holding her spare key in my hand. She'd wake up tomorrow in a different life. And I wouldn't be in it. I didn't write a note. Didn't scream. Didn't wake her up. I left her 3 things on the bed. Her spare key. A silver flash drive labeled in bold black ink. Read this first. A printed copy of our post-nup agreement. Highlighted, tabbed, annotated. Her signature sat there on page 7. Above it, a single sentence underlined in red. Any violation of fidelity as defined herein shall nullify all spousal claims to jointly acquired assets. I didn't sign the letter. I didn't need to. The flash drive contained everything. The photos, the text logs, the hotel bookings, the GPS tags. Organized by date. Time-stamped. Cold. Undeniable. I didn't want revenge. I wanted closure. And I wanted it clean. I took my go-bag, already packed weeks earlier, and left through the side door. The car was waiting, preloaded with what little I cared to take. Laptop, hard drives, documents, a few clothes. Everything else could rot. I drove in silence. No music, just the sound of the road. By sunrise, I was 200 miles away in a furnished apartment I had leased under a different name. Month to month. No ties, just space. And quiet. For the first time in what felt like a lifetime, I exhaled. She would wake up around 7. She'd find the bed empty, the house still, the Wi-Fi down, her access code rejected, her emails locked, her credit cards declined. She'd reach for her phone. No connection. She'd try the front gate. No response. She'd open the bedroom door and see 3 things that mattered more than anything she'd hidden. The key, the flash drive, the contract she signed with a smirk. By then, the reports would already be in motion. Her employer, an anonymous email with a copy of the romantic getaways booked on company time, charged to the shared card under a false trip title. Our financial institution, authorization to restrict her access until further legal review. My attorney greenlit to file. And me? I was already gone. No confrontation. No chaos. No war. Just absence. That's the part she never expected. She thought I'd scream, cry, demand explanations, give her space to twist the narrative, play the victim, rewrite the truth. But I didn't give her the chance. I didn't leave a mess. I left a message. One that couldn't be interrupted, deleted, or softened by performance. One where silence said everything. This wasn't about punishing her. It was about removing myself from the game. She broke it. I just walked away. Marla must have woken up around 7:12 a.m. The bedroom camera, one I installed into a nondescript charging station months earlier, logged motion at exactly that time. Just the soft creak of the mattress, her hand brushing the sheets beside her. Finding nothing. Not warmth. Not me. She must have called out half asleep. I know her voice when she's groggy. Light, unsure, still testing the edges of the morning. I imagine her blinking into the quiet, sitting up slowly, rubbing the fog from her eyes, then glancing around. No coffee brewing, no shower running, no footsteps, just that eerie stillness of a home abandoned. She probably assumed I'd stepped out for groceries, or maybe for a jog, something casual, innocent. But that illusion didn't last long. The first real blow landed when she grabbed her phone and realized there was no service. The SIM had been removed remotely, the data plan transferred, her number rerouted to a new device registered to me. From her perspective, her phone had just died. She must have moved to the kitchen next, thinking she'd reset the router. That's when she'd find the Wi-Fi was offline. Password changed. No access. She'd go for her laptop, then the iPad. Locked out. Everything, iCloud, Gmail, shared docs, even the fitness app she tracked her runs with, gone. She wouldn't panic at first. Not right away. She'd get annoyed. Maybe a little confused. But she'd try to shake it off. Until she walked toward the front gate and realized the code didn't work anymore. She'd enter it once, then again, slower. Then a third time, pressing harder. It would beep, then flash red. Access denied. That was when it would really hit. She was locked out of her own life. Or more accurately, the life she thought was still shared. Her car keys still worked. I left those. No need to strand her. I wasn't interested in cruelty, just clarity. But when she tried to check her banking app to confirm her balance, her login would fail. New passwords. Multi-factor authentication rerouted. Calls to customer service? Blocked by a voice prompt asking for answers to new security questions, answers only I would know. She'd reach for the landline next. Dead. I canceled it at 4 a.m. By the time she returned to the bedroom, she would find the key, the flash drive, and the printout of our post-nuptial agreement. I imagine she didn't touch them at first. Just stood there staring, trying to rationalize it all. Maybe she thought I was bluffing. But inside that silver USB, clearly labeled in bold ink, was everything. She just had to open it. And she would. Eventually. She'd see the evidence. All of it. The messages. The voice memo. The flight logs. The hotel invoices. A cross-referenced timeline with calendar entries and her own photos. A file labeled GPS Discrepancies Colorado Trip. And a folder titled Workplace Misuse with *TS of her using company resources to organize personal rendezvous. It wasn't just betrayal. It was breach. By the time she processed it, her day would be unraveling in real time. Her work email? Suspended. I'd sent an anonymous report to her HR department earlier that morning detailing personal expenses disguised as client outings, timestamped images of her with Colin, and a scanned copy of a booking confirmation using her company's travel portal to cover a private weekend. They weren't going to fire her on the spot, but they were going to call her in. And Marla, who prided herself on grace under pressure, would be scrambling to explain herself before she even finished her first cup of coffee. I imagine the moment her card was declined hit her hard. She probably stood at the gas station, trying again and again as the screen flashed, transaction rejected. Maybe she tried to call the number on the back, only to hear, this card has been temporarily disabled. Maybe she reached for her backup card. Same result. By the time she pulled back into the driveway, if she still thought of it as our driveway, she would find herself locked out again. The garage wouldn't respond to her clicker. The gate wouldn't open. The house was no longer hers. Not legally. Not emotionally. Not digitally. I didn't need to scream or break plates. I just needed to remove her from the ecosystem she took for granted. That night, I imagined she returned to her parents' place or maybe to a friend's house if any of them were still answering. Though, that's another thing. By then, most of them weren't. Because that morning, I sent a different package to a short list of people, only those who deserved to know. I didn't spin the story. I didn't accuse. I just sent a zip file of images and calendar logs with the subject line, not everything is what it seems. Friends. Family. A few of her professional contacts. I let the receipts speak. I didn't tell them what to believe. I just gave them enough to decide for themselves. And most of them did. By that evening, Marla had called 4 people. 2 never answered. 1 texted her a vague excuse about needing space. The 4th told her directly, I can't get involved. I'm sorry. Colin? Vanished. The last message he sent was, what did you tell him? And when she didn't respond fast enough, he blocked her. Gone. Like he was never there. I checked her LinkedIn the next day. She updated her profile. Removed the company name. Set it to consultant. Open to work. She hadn't even lasted 24 hours. Somewhere in that 12-hour stretch, she must have opened the final folder on the drive. The one titled, Just for You. Inside? 1 single file. A photo. Not of her. Not of Colin. Just a close-up of the wedding vows we wrote together. Her handwriting. The part that said, I promise to walk beside you, never behind or ahead, and never into the arms of another. Below it, a note in my handwriting. 5 words. You already broke your promise. No signature. No goodbye. Nothing else. No narrative. No defense. Just the truth. Marla always said I was too quiet. That I held things in too long. That I didn't fight for things the way I should. She mistook that silence for weakness. But silence isn't weakness. It's a scalpel. And when used properly, it cuts cleaner than rage ever could. She tried to call me twice. The number no longer existed. She emailed me from a new address. Just a subject line, please. I didn't open it. There was nothing left to say. Not from her. Not to her. I didn't disappear to hurt her. I disappeared because the man she cheated on no longer existed. I was no longer the partner she had betrayed. I was someone new. Someone she'd never meet again. And she knew it. That was the real punishment. Not being yelled at. Not being exposed. But being erased. She tried calling everyone. Her sister, her college roommate, even our neighbor who used to borrow sugar and vent about her husband. No one picked up. The ones who did kept it short, polite, distant. She scrolled through messages, rereading threads with people who now wouldn't reply. Colin didn't ghost, he vanished. Socials deactivated. Number disconnected. She must have stared at her screen, trying to find someone who'd still say her name without flinching. But the silence she gave me had returned to her, amplified. I hadn't shouted, but my exit echoed louder than any fight ever could. I hadn't ruined her life. She had died a week later. She stood outside my new office, rain clinging to her like regret. I walked past without a glance. She followed me home once, but home was no longer ours. She found only an empty house, stripped of every trace. Just the bed remained, sheets tucked crisp and tight. On her pillow, one frame. Inside it, a printout of her old journal entry. I would cheat if I knew I wouldn't get caught. Underneath, in my handwriting, now you don't have to be afraid. No signature, no return, just finality. The ending she wrote, now framed for her to live with, alone.